All right, so today's app that we're going to build will be an iPad app. So we're going to discuss dealing with multiple devices. Now, in the UI kit world, this was a larger topic because I would have introduced auto layout into this, but now with SwiftUI, we don't have to worry about that so much anymore because SwiftUI auto lays out all of the items that we want to put on our screen in a way that it'll fit nicely on all devices. But we're still going to talk a little bit about the iPad and how you can control code to execute on the iPad versus the iPhone versus the other devices out there like Apple TV or Apple CarPlay. So first thing we're going to do is just look at our final product here. All right, so we're going to have like a simple, we're also going to discuss text entry. So text input using TextField. So there's the name. I'm just going to do a Command K just to show you that, here's the keyboard, the virtual keyboard, but I'll type in through my keyboard. I'll say like Jim Kirk, right? And you can see in real time that my label is being updated with Jim Kirk. And also email, I'll put jim at kirk.com, right? And you can see that the label below it is being updated as well, all right? Now I'm going to hit return to make the keyboard go away, which is also an interesting thing. In SwiftUI, they now make the keyboard go away, whereas in the UI kit world, we had to actually add extra work so that we could get the keyboard to go away. And that's no longer an issue here as well. We're also going to take a dive into PencilKit. So the Apple Pencil was introduced to be a companion tool for the iPad in a way that would allow you to take notes, do drawings in a very quick and fast manner. And the beauty of the Apple Pencil is that it'll take your writing and convert it to text for you. It has the text recognition software built into it, or writing recognition software built into it, so that it can convert it to text. All right. So what we're going to do today is we're going to actually play around with just a simple drawing application. We're going to build a simple drawing. So here I'm going to drawing a little bit, right? And then I'm going to maybe make the pen thicker. It's a little bit of a delay in it, so it takes a little bit of time. So I'm going to just try now. It takes a little bit of time for the pen to get thicker for some reason, but you can see it's starting to get thicker. Oops. And there. And we'll also actually, I'll go even thicker. Let's try red. Change the color to red. So clicking on the red circle there. There you go. You got red and there's blue. You can see the blue drawings as well. You can see my Picasso art there for what we're going to do today. All right, so that's the end game. And then what we'll do is we'll try this out. We're going to control our code so that on the iPhone, we'll run the same app on the iPhone. You won't have the Apple Pencil drawing area. You'll just have the name and email options for the iPhone version. So just as a design characteristic, like as an example, suppose you didn't want to have certain characters, certain items run on an iPhone versus an iPad. Like the canvas might be too large for a small iPhone, so we can hide it. All right, so that's our goal for today. So our first step is to build a new project. All right, so we're doing iOS single view application. And I'm going to call this M2 for module 2, P2 for part 2, and call it iPad. And give it a home. And make sure that before you give it a home, user interface is SwiftUI. And give it a home. All right, so the first thing I want to do is I want to play around with getting the name and email and the text field entries up and running. Okay. So first thing I do is I'm going to define a couple of state variables, and I'll do that right here, just above body. So we'll say state var, call it my name, extend string. I'll just default it to be empty text. And then we'll say state var my email, extend string, also empty text. All right. Now, let's start by trying to display the two text fields. All right, so we'll do that inside body. And I'm going to actually reuse the hello world and just instead change it to say my iPad app. But I'm also going to put this inside a VStack because I want to add more stuff. So I'm going to say VStack. Now below my iPad app, the text, I'm going to add text field. So I'm going to say text field. And the way it works is that you can have, you provide two arguments. You'll provide first the text that you want to have in there, like the placeholder text. So I'll just say name, put a colon in, maybe put a space, and then you'll say comma, and you'll append it, or you'll attach it to the state variable that you want to keep track of the variable. So I'm going to say text colon and then dollar my name. All right, and right below it, let's put a text label in there by saying text your name colon and then slash round bracket self dot my name. All right, so it just puts the text in real time. Now let's do the same for email. So I'm going to say text field. I'm going to say email colon, and actually I'm going to take it a little bit further with email. I'm going to do a bit of a change here compared to name. I want to illustrate an additional feature of text field. So I'll say email, comma, text, colon, dollar, my email. But I'm going to introduce another argument. So I'm going to say comma, and this argument is called onEditingChanged. What the beauty of this third argument is that you can embed a mini event handler, also known as block coding, such that when you start editing, or when you've edited the value in the text field, you can fire off some code to have some additional work happen. Like, for example, maybe you want to push this data directly to a database the moment you're done with it, or something. But you can do that. So in terms of onEditingChanged, we're going to introduce what's called block coding. It's code within code. So passing in code as an argument to a method is typically what block coding is done for. It's used all over the place in iOS, and this is our first introduction to it. The way you introduce block coding is inside your argument here. I'm just going to hit enter to add some space here. All right, so the closing round bracket is still there. I'm going to add lots of space so we can see what it really looks like. To introduce block coding, you open up a set of curly brackets. I'm going to say curly, and I'm going to close my curly right here. All right, so the two curlies match. All right, this is block coding here, and I'm going to pass in an argument. Now the arguments are typically predefined. In fact, we could even see if Xcode will help us. Now, it doesn't look very helpful because it doesn't look like the correct one. If I hit that, there's actually an argument that is supposed to be passed in for this. So I'm going to replace the underscore with changed. So that's the argument that we passed in to this piece of block code. And the keyword in is like saying begin. All right, begin your block code. That's kind of like what it means. So you can actually go ahead and start typing in your block code. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say print email on editing changed. All right. And I can also specify what was changed. So I'll say slash changed. All right. Now, there was another option as you were typing in on editing changed. It's called on commit. So that's also another event handler you could pass in. In fact, what we could do is we could also append to it, but I'm not gonna get into that today. Instead, what I'm going to do is double check that I've got all my brackets in place. It looks like I have everything in place. All right, so this is all I'm going to say is just on editing change, just print out what's been typed. So here I've embedded block code. All right, and I've got my closing brackets there. Now what I want to do is I want to add a text field, which might be defeating the purpose here, but I'll add it anyway. Sorry, not text field, but text. Just to print out the email. So I'll just say your email, colon, and then slash my email. All right, and that's it. Okay. Now let's see what happens when we run this thing. So I'm going to change from an iPhone 11 Pro Max to the iPad Air 3rd Gen. And here we can see my iPad app, your name, your email. I'll just typing in Jim Kirk. All right, you can see that it's been updated in real time. I'll type in email, jim@kirk.com. Right now, you're probably wondering, well, where is this email on editing changed line? Actually, it's here in the console because a print command prints to the console, which is right here. And you can actually enable the console through these blue buttons here, or as well as ensuring that this button here is enabled as well. All right. So if I scroll up, there it is. Email on editing changed true. Okay. So it's saying true. So changed is a Boolean. All right. So it's saying email on editing change true happened here. All right. So that's our text field that we've got so far. Now let's look into adding that canvas. All right. Now, in order to now what we want to do is we want to set it up so that when the device is an iPad, we're going to do the following code. Otherwise, if it's an iPhone, we're not going to do anything. In fact, let's just start with learning how to control code in such a manner. So the line of code that we would add is if UI device dot current dot user interface idiom equals dot, and you can see the options here: CarPlay, Pad for iPad, Phone for iPhone, TV for Apple TV, or unspecified. So I'm going to say if it's Pad for iPad, then we'll do the following code. But let's start off simple by just putting text and saying my iPad stuff here. And let's just run it. Okay. Now you can see that label, my iPad stuff here, is here at the bottom. The trick now is to switch simulators to the iPhone 11 Pro. And you can see that you don't have that extra line down here. You're ending at your email. All right. So we're ending at your email. So we know that this is how you can control code. And then the following code we're going to do will not work for an iPad, or will not work for an iPhone because we've turned it off for the iPhone. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to introduce our Apple Pencil, and in particular our canvas, so we can draw with an Apple Pencil. And the nice thing about the simulator, we can just use our mouse to simulate the Apple Pencil and be able to do our drawing accordingly. So the first thing I need to tell you is that Apple Pencil's canvas is not implemented in SwiftUI as of yet. And like in the last video when we learned about objects that weren't compatible, like for example the WebKit view, that there is a wrapper class we can use for getting UIKit stuff to work in the SwiftUI world, and that was UI view representable. So what I'm going to do is, before continuing on with my code here, I'm going to introduce a new struct. So I'm going to scroll down a bit, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say struct my canvas, and it'll be extending UI view representable. Now, with UI view representable, there are two methods that we need to introduce here. The first is func make UI view, and the argument passed will be context, which is context, and it'll return a PK canvas view, which you notice did not autocomplete, which tells you that you have to introduce an import into this project. So I'm going to scroll up to the top. We have import SwiftUI. We need to import PencilKit. We also need to import combine. And you notice I forgot the T in import. There. All right. So now what we can do is scroll back to that struct and continue on with implementing the struct. All right, now let's open and close our curly for this method. All right, now the canvas itself that we'll be drawing on will be inside of a PK canvas view. In fact, let's introduce our variable for that here. So we learned about state, and state as a keyword is used for telling for any variable that is attached to something that's on the screen to tell the system to repaint or refresh that particular item on the screen whenever the state variable has changed, right? There's another type of word, it's called binding, right? There's another keyword called binding. It's like think of it as like the receiver of the data from state. If you ever want to put that state, have that state variable accessible in other classes, like in this case, in this struct, we use binding to call that variable. Now we're going to introduce those variables in a moment, but let's introduce the bindings of those first, since we're dealing with this class right now. So I'm going to say binding var canvas view extends pk canvas view, and then binding var. Now we're going to set up so the user has the choice between what color, as we saw in the demo. So let's introduce the pen color right now. Say pen color extends UI color. We'll say binding var pen thickness, which will be a CG float. So we'll give the user the option with the slider that we saw in the demo to specify how thick the pen should be. So now that we have that, we can go ahead and implement our canvas view. All right, so we'll say self.canvasView .tool equals pk inking tool. All right, we'll pass in what kind do we want. So dot marker, pen, or pencil. Now this you can play around with and expand this app so that you can maybe let the user choose marker or pencil if they wanted to, but I'll just choose pen. All right, and then color will be self.penColor, and width will be self.penThickness. And then we'll return canvas view. Now, make UI view, its purpose, as we discussed in the last video, is to initialize the object that you are representing here inside UI view representable. So we're basically initializing canvas view, and we're setting it up, or set up its characteristics with the PK inking tool, and specifying pen, color, and thickness, and returning it back to the color. Now, there's another method we need called update UI view. So I'm going to say func update UI view. So it's going to give me an autocomplete there, I believe. Yeah. All right. So that's the autocomplete I was looking for. All right. And notice the error goes away once we implement update UI view. So update UI view's purpose is to modify the view anytime we make a change to any of the state variables, right? Or in this case, binding variables. So we're just going to refresh the canvas view by saying self.canvasView equals pk inking tool dot pen color is self.penColor, and then width is self.penThickness. All right, and that's our struct for defining our canvas for the drawing utility. Now, the question is, how do we use this thing? All right, so we're going to do a bunch of things here. All right, first, let's just get this up and running. Keep it really simple. What we're going to do is scroll back up. I'm going to replace my iPad stuff here with the canvas. But before we do that, I want to actually introduce the state variables that will correspond to the binding variables we just defined. So go up here and we'll say state var pen color extends UI color, which equals dot black. And then we'll say state var pen name extends string equal to black. I want to keep track of the name as well. So that's why I have the pen name string. And then state var pen thickness, which is a CG float. And I'll set that to 15. 15.0 is what you need. You can't just say 15, you have to say 15.0. All right, now that I have these state variables here, let's go ahead and use these. Okay, so now back to my interface idiom iPad, I'm going to say my canvas, open up some brackets, and actually everything's there. So if I hit enter to autocomplete it, I'm just going to pass in $canvas view. Pen color is $pen color. And finally, pen thickness is $pen thickness. And of course, we're getting the error because we defined pen color, pen thickness, but we forgot to define canvas view. So we got to go back up to our state variable definition, add another state variable, saying state var canvas view extend, well, not extends, we'll actually just instantiate and say pk canvas view. Sorry, equals pk canvas view. There we go. And all your errors go away. And let's see what it looks like right now. Oh, forgot to switch it to the iPad. Back to the iPad 3rd gen. And if I start drawing around this open space, I can see there's my canvas view. All right. Let's add some functionality to this canvas view. All right. So now the trick is to allow the user to choose a few extra options here. So what we'll do is, actually before even that, there is the ability to, well, typically in actions to clear, undo, and redo. Let's incorporate that into here. And there's actually functionality to do that. All right. So what we're going to do first of all is define an object that will allow us to do the undo, redo, and clear. The object is called undoManager. It's a system variable. And because it's a system variable, we have to introduce another keyword here. So I'm going to continue on here and use another keyword called environment. So I'm going to say @environment. And when I do that inside round brackets, I'll say /dot, and it's called undoManager. All right. And I'll say var undoManager. All right. And so what this is telling SwiftUI is that there's a system variable called undoManager. Let's bring it into this content view so we can use it and take advantage of it. So now I can introduce some buttons to do clear, undo, and redo. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is inside my idiom pad, just before the canvas definition, let's introduce buttons to specify, to allow the user to do these three options. So I'm going to put this inside an H stack. So they're side by side. And then I'll say button. And this button will just say clear. All right. And we'll open close set of curlies. So this is another way to define buttons as well. Instead of doing the typical action that we've done to date, what we're doing here is we're introducing a button, the text is clear, and inside the curly brackets is the action we want to perform. So this is a typical completion handler type functionality we've seen in Swift all along. So I'm going to say self.canvasView.drawing equals pk drawing. All right, so this will just, we're just going to reinstantiate everything and clear everything out. All right, now I'll say, oh, now let's introduce a button called undo. All right, and we'll say self.undoManager.undo. And finally, button redo. And we'll say self.undoManager.redo. All right, and let's run it, and let's see these things in action. So it's going to draw, hit clear, draw again, hit undo, and hit redo. So you can see that your drawings can now be cleared, undone, and redone as well. Since we have this H stack here, let's go ahead and add a slider for thickness. All right, so we'll add a slider for thickness. So after button, I'm going to say slider. We already defined the variable for thickness, so I'm just going to say value $pen thickness. And we'll set a range. So we'll say in colon. I'm going to set the range to be from a thickness of 10 to, so ... 125. You could probably expand it further and actually say, and actually specify what the thickness is. Like you say text thickness colon and then slash self.pen thickness. All right. So there's our thickness, which should update and change as we're adding thickness. But let's finish this off by adding options for colors. So below the canvas, all right, I'm going to add another H stack. And inside of it, I'm going to introduce some circles that will allow the user to click and be able to specify the color they want to use. So we'll use buttons. So I'll say button. I'll go back to my old way of defining a button, just so you can see the different ways to define a button. I'll say action, colon, and then open my curly. This will be for red. So I'll say self.penColor equals .red, and self.penName is equal to the text red. All right, and then my text for it will actually not be text, but instead we're going to introduce a circle. So there's drawing utilities within SwiftUI, one of them being a circle. So I'm going to instantiate a circle, and we'll say .fill will be color.red. .frame we'll set to be like 40 by 40, so width will be 40 and height will be 40. And finally, padding.all, just so we have some space around this thing. All right. Forgot to put the curlies around after circles, so let's fix that. And looks like everything's happy. Instead of typing this out over and over, I'm going to take this block and copy and paste it 2 more times. And just change red to blue for the second one. And the text to be blue. And color.blue there. All right, and then the third one will be black. So .black. Text will be black as well. And the fill will be .black. All right. And that is all. Now you have enough to run and to verify that you have a working drawing option with different thickness and different color. In fact, just to finish things off, let's add one final text label by saying color selected is, and then slash self.pen name. Okay, now let's give it a run. And now you can see your different colors. Right now, color selected is black. I'm going to just draw a line there. So there's my black line. I'm going to change to red. And there's red. Change to blue. There's my blue. Now let's change the thickness. I'm going to go big to 106. Now you can see it got thicker. All right. And I'll thin it out. There, it's thinner. So there you go. So now you have a full-fledged drawing app where you can just draw whatever you want and play around with it. You can undo, and it just undid that last little drawing I did. You can redo that last little drawing, clear the whole thing, enter your name and email. So now you know how to also enter text in using TextField and play with it. One last final thing we'll do is verify that this drawing stuff does not exist on an iPhone. So I'm just going to hit stop and go to iPhone 11 Pro, hit run, and bring it over. And as you can see, there's nothing down here and everything's centered. Whereas you notice that everything was pushed up for the iPad, right? So there you have it. Now you can control code so that it runs on iPhone only or iPad only as well. All right, so that's it for today, and I'll see you guys in the next video.